So thanks everybody for joining us for the Spring Lawn Seminar. I'm Trevor Cameron, the General Manager here at Sunnyside. Say hi to Nicole.
Good morning.
Got in the questions in the background. We appreciate everybody joining us here today. We got some sunshine here in Western Washington. It's a nice, almost spring day here. We got a few weeks, but it's the perfect time to kind of talk about getting lawns rejuvenated here as we're coming out of winter. So again, I'll emphasize Western Washington is where we are, just north of Seattle. If you're joining us from elsewhere, I'm going to be talking about cool season grass, our local grass. We're not talking about Bermuda grass and zoysia grass and the Southern California grass. So some of the principles will certainly apply to you as well, but we're talking about Pacific Northwest turf here today. So there you go. I hope everybody got a chance to get the handout. I've got my copy here to keep me on track during the class. So there's your handout. If it's available on the website, print it, use it. I've found over the years, having that list of kind of step 1, step 2, step 3 will save you some time. In my opinion, most gardeners in the spring go straight for a bag of fertilizer on the turf, which isn't the end of the world, but in our neck of the woods, you inevitably feed the moss and the weeds, and then you feed the turf afterwards. So this will hopefully get you taken care of what we don't want in the grass, and then we can get our food on and get ready to go for spring. Everybody wants to spend their summer in the sunshine up here, enjoying the weather, not probably getting a lot of yard work done. So if we can spend part of a couple of weekends here in March to early April getting our turf management done for the season, you're going to have beautiful grass the rest of the season. You won't have a lot of work to do except a little watering in the summer and keeping it mowed the rest of the year. You'll have beautiful lawns. So I'm going to start by making 2 confessions here. I am the OCD lawn guy. So pre-children, I was extremely OCD. My wife would probably laugh if she was reading this because I'm the one who went out and cut little pieces of POA out of my grass every night after work and picked up every needle and leaf and blah, blah, blah. I'm still pretty bad, but with 2 young boys, I don't have quite as much time. So I still have great grass, but maybe not quite the level of OCD as before. And I'll talk a lot about natural organic things today. And I don't want to offend anybody, who's a Scott's fan or used to chemical fertilizer or whatever the case is. You can make your own choice, but I would just encourage you to try some natural things. They work just as well. You're doing a great service for the environment, particularly when we get into pest and disease management. But frankly, fertilizer is the basis for everything. And in our neck of the woods, we get a lot of rain. A lot of that Scott's type fertilizer is going to flush through the soil very quickly, and it's not doing much for long-term nutrition. If you've used those products, you know what I mean? It grows like gangbusters for 2 weeks, and we mow, and then it just crashes and burns until you feed it. I kind of jokingly call it grass crack again. You're going to throw some more drugs on there, and it'll green up again. And when the cycle never ends. With organics, you're going to see a much gentler growth cycle, great color on it, and frankly, you're helping build your soil chemistry. So much better for the soil, which means I have happy grass. I will say this, whether it's organic, natural, chemical, systemic, make sure you read the label. Speaking as the male side of the population, most of us guys buy a 5,000 square foot bag and dump it on 1,000 square feet because we figure it'll work 5 times better that way. So make sure you read the label. You don't waste your money. And particularly when you get into chemical applications, things are very safe. The EPA is not going to let you, put death down on your grass if it's going to kill everything in the world. If you use more than you're supposed to, yeah, you're going to seep a lot of that in the environment. But if we use things properly according to the label, you're going to have much better success, save a little bit of money, and again, hopefully keep the environmental contamination to a minimum, okay? So I'm going to be clear, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. If you're a Scott's fan or whatever else, that's your choice, but I'll probably focus a little more on organic and natural things today. If we go, we're going to go through the sheet here kind of step by step, and then at the end, I prepared a couple of slides. We'll go fast and furious through quite a bit of products that I recommend, and I decided to listen to your questionnaires over the last coming weeks, and I've got a picture of all of it in the slideshow at the end, so don't think you got to race and scribble it down. We'll have all that stuff where you can go back and watch it, and there's a big picture of the bag or the bottle on there, so you can take notes during the slideshow. So if we start with moss, number one, I know, as I mentioned, the first thing I would always do in Western Washington is try to eradicate the moss. You know, moss always comes in the wet, cool season. It's every spring, it's every fall, to be honest with you. You've got to get that out of there if you want your grass to reestablish. So let's make sure we start with moss control, will be number one. I've got two choices. Number one is probably the classic ferrous iron sulfate. So you'll see a picture of that bag in my slideshow, but that is a granulated iron-based moss control. If I apply that down on my grass, that is something that will turn my moss black. It hits the moss on the turf. Iron does not harm lawn at all. So your grass will actually turn a deep, dark green, almost a black green sometimes. It's not fertilizer. I want to make sure that's clear, because a lot of people see it green up and think, oh, sweet, my feeding's done. It's a temporary thing. The grass can absorb the iron. Moss cannot. So if we apply that moss out on there, we will kill moss, and then we just got to go back and rake it out. Be real careful with the granulated things, whatever brand name it is. We like the Moss Max by Bonide. It could be a number of different brand names, but if I'm not careful and I put that out in a spreader, it's going to spit those granulars all over the place. If that gets on concrete, wood, any kind of hard surface, I'm going to stain orange like rust, and it does not come out. Trust me. My wife is still getting me for my patio about 10 years ago. So be real careful when you do the do the iron based. What I have swapped to is a potassium based. So this is Moss Max, the same brand name by Bonide. That is a liquid. If I can get the tilt right, I'll have a picture of it again at the end. Potassium is a natural thing where I don't have to worry about staining. So you'll see there on the label, I can apply that on my deck, my sidewalk, my grass. If I'm careful in my planting beds and I don't get it directly on foliage, I can use that in a lot of areas. Potassium will break down the soil, does a very good job of killing moss, but I don't have to use the iron. So I'm a little less likely to do any staining. It turns the moss more of a straw color versus black, and it might take just a little bit longer, but it does work, because that's what I do now too. So there's your two options for moss control. So I would always start with that. Phase two here is going to be get the weeds out. You know, I'm kind of an OCD guy, so I don't have a lot of weeds in my turf because I keep up on it season to season, but there's obviously, I'm going to find a few when I go prepare it for spring. I want to get the weeds taken care of first before I get into my feeding, and we'll go through the rest of the process. So lots of different choices for herbicide, but I'd probably start by just mentioning a couple of basic facts. Here's your free botany lesson for the day. So we would have two kinds of plants, literally almost in the entire world. And when we go back to seed stage, plants will either grow with one seed leaf, monocots they call them, or I would grow from two seed leaves, a dicot. Grasses are monocots. Pretty much every other plant on earth is a dicot. So when I look at herbicides, I can get what they call selective herbicides. So I can get a product that will kill a dicot but not hurt a monocot, if that makes sense. So lawn herbicides are products that will not harm your grasses or turf, but they would take care of any other broadleaf weed kind of business. The hard part of that is, again, the OCD side of me is like, well, yeah, but I want one kind of grass in my lawn. I ended up with Poa Anna and a little of this and a little of that. I don't have a magical cure for you to take care of those without harming your turf. So you got to be very careful what choices you make with herbicides. The things I'm going to show you are going to take care of anything from chickweed, dandelion, clover, all the different things that might pop up in our lawns, safely take care of those without having to kill our turf. So you'll see on the sheet there, there's quite a bit of options for different choices. I'll just show you real quick. Weed Beater Ultra. Again, you'll see the picture in the slideshow. Weed Beater Ultra is something that's probably a chemical application. This is something that's got superior cold range. So when we're early in the season, you know, probably just another week or two, I can start using this when it's 45 degrees pretty consistently, and I will get weed death. A lot of the other products I've seen, Weed Be Gone, some other things, a little different formulation, it's got to be much warmer, so I have to wait later in spring to attack my weeds. So if I'm going to go kind of the easy nondescript chemical route, that takes care of most all my weeds, the Weed Beater Ultra. If I step it up one level, this is a product called Sedge Ender. Now this will take care of a few of the annual weedy grasses that we might get in our lawns, as well as all the things that Weed Beater Ultra do. So it's almost like Weed Beater Ultra. This is a little bit step up on the sedge ender. A new one we got this year is that same brand, Weed Beater Ultra plus crabgrass. Now, we don't specifically fight crabgrass in Western Washington, but that term kind of refers to, again, a lot of those annual weedy, seedy grasses that might blow in and germinate in spring. That would be a product, again, I can go up to a third level if I want to get a little bit more OCD. The final stage of chemical is going to be brush killer. Now that sounds funny. Why would he ever tell me to use brush killer on my lawn? But this would be, you know, I've had a couple emails come in this week. I got buttercup, I got horsetail, I got some things in your grass. I'm going to be honest, the other stuff is not going to get that out of there. It's too tough of a weed. If I want to get everything out of there, I'm going to go towards brush killer. This is a chemical. You got to be really careful not to get it on your edge of your beds and your plantings and your perennials and shrubs, because this will kill anything it touches. We would use this to kill blackberries, bamboos, all kinds of stuff. But it's very effective as a lawn treatment. It will not hurt your turf. It says that right on the label when you come look at it. And if, again, I've got buttercup, horsetail, some things that I'm fighting in typical herbicides probably will not kill root and all. This would be kind of the last phase here if you want to get it all. Now I'm going to show you, this is what I use, again, on the natural side. Same brand label by Bonide, Weed Beater FE. So FE, if you're in chemistry at all, we know that's the periodic element iron. So this is made of natural HDTA iron. I discovered this in a different brand probably 15 years ago or so now. And this is all I use to do weed spraying. That's, again, iron. So I don't hurt, no chemical, I don't hurt anything. It turns my grass a little darker. It's kind of funny when you walk out and you spot spray a weed here and there, you end up with these dark green polka dots on your emerald green grass, and then the iron flushes through the grass system and you're right back to the same color again. But this is one that I have really good luck with. I'll be honest, it's not going to touch, again, the buttercup, the horsetail, but dandelions, common weeds that you see in typical turf areas. This will take care of almost all of them without having to go the chemical route. This is a concentrate bottle, certainly a little more economical if you've got a larger area. I've got about 2,000 square feet between 3 lawns and myself. I buy the gallon RTU already mixed up and just keep it in my garage on the shelf. A bottle of that will last me a couple years. So it's not that you're using this all the time. You go out and get ahead in spring with your spraying. I don't have a chance for those little weeds to germinate, propagate, go to seed, and now I've got 1,000 of them. So get a head start on it right now and they'll take care of it. If you wait till June, you're going to be fighting a lot more of the weeds in there. Now, the one thing I'll say with herbicides is always consider using a surfactant in a Jugan. It's got a bunch of different names. Essentially, it's glue in a bottle. It's called Turbo Spreader Sticker. Should have brought a bottle of it in here. It comes in a little tiny bottle, but if you're applying an herbicide, whether you're trying to kill blackberries and brush off the bank or in your lawn, if I have a little bit of that mixed into my herbicide mixture, it is going to stick it to the foliage a lot better. I don't need to use it with the FE, but let's say you chose to go the chemical route. If you want to use as little chemical as possible, not overuse it, and really glue it to those foliage, especially things like clover. If you know clover, it's got a hairy, kind of waxy leaf, and I could spray that with a liquid and it tends to bead and just drop off the foliage. If I use that turbo spreader sticker, boom, it's going to glue it to that leaf, and I'll have much better luck with things like clover, oxalis, some of those weeds that are a little bit tougher to get. Okay, so that's kind of herbicides for you in a nutshell. You'll see on 3 there is thatching and aerating. Now that's, not to say everybody has to do both of those. Speaking from my own experience, I don't think you have to aerate as much unless you have compacted soil. I would ask you on the aeration side, go back to last summer. Did you apply water to your grass and try to keep it green? Or did you do the Western Washington thing and just kind of let it brown out? And that's okay too. But if you tried to keep it watered and it did not penetrate and we went brown anyway, we probably have soil compaction, too much roots down there, and we need to freshen that up. So aerating is something you go rent a core aerator or have somebody do it for you. That would plug my lawn. All the little plugs come up. Think the golf course if you're a golfer. That gets done twice a year at every golf course around. That would remove that root thatch layer and allow me to bring in fresh compost or fill all those plugs and have fresh root soil in the root zone for my grass to reestablish and look a heck of a lot better. So aerating is one choice, whether you do it or don't. I would say most folks maybe on slopes in full sun, or again, if you're out in the summer and you're feeling like concrete dirt and you tried to water and it's just not penetrating, then maybe consider having somebody come aerate it, or go to a rental shop and get yourself an aerator for a couple hours. Thatching, I think, is a huge benefit to everybody. I brought let me grab my, this is the old school. If you look at this Conan the Barbarian weapon, this looks pretty lethal, but that is your thatch rake, old school thatch rake. But this is one, if you're up for it, I would take this out and drag this across my lawn after I've done moss, after I've done the weeds. Again, if you kill the moss, you rake it out, you get rid of it. You kill the weeds, you rake it. Why not get the moss done, the weeds done, and just do one big rake, removes all that debris. Now, if you thatch properly, you're probably going to sit back and go, what have I done? Whether you do the rake, last year is the first year that I went down and rented a power thatcher, and it was much easier on the body. My 2,000 square feet took me about an hour and a half and I was done. So it's not a huge project with the machine, but when you're done, I'll show you a picture in my slideshow of mine last spring. It should look like you have destroyed your turf area. You're probably going to go outside and go, what have I done to my grass? But we're trying to get rid of all that dead debris. If you mow all year and you catch it in a bag, you catch some of it, but not all of it. If you mow and let the clippings fall, that's a great way to mulch your turf, but we've got to get that thatch layer out of there on a regular basis, because that is where I'll have issues with thatch diseases we'll talk about in a minute, and I need to open up that turf area for fresh seed and new grass to develop. Just 1 second here. I couldn't get it to swap. Usually it's easy, but it just doesn't do it today. Well, I'll keep talking while we're roaring out of here. So everyone understand, we've got the aerating part of it done. The thatch is phase 2. Now, when I've removed all that debris, now it's time to get into the work that typically people start off with. I get my food down, I get my lime down, I get some fresh grass seed on, and I top dress to keep everything mulched. So if I'm looking at kind of an estimate for you, if you look at that sheet, there's a pretty good coverage. So if I'm looking at using about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 inch of top dress, whether we do compost, I would never complain about that, or I'll pick it up here. This is a specific bag we carry just for lawn season called Top Coat. This is the same pure organic compost that you would get from E.B. Stone. It's beautiful stuff, dark black. It's just screened one more time. So I really fine, real easy seed cover. I mean, it's the perfect mix to throw on. This Top Coat comes in 1.5 cubic foot bags. So you figure on one of those bags probably covering about 200 square feet after you've seeded. If you buy compost, we would get the bigger bales, which frankly is what I do most of the time. Those will cover about 400 square feet. So it's not a huge amount. Mine's 5 bales like clockwork every single spring, every single fall when I go through this process. So that's your top dress choice. If we look at seed, I've seen all kinds of seed and all kinds of manufacturers. We kind of stick with the same one. This probably goes back 20, 25 years with me personally. We package our own. You can see our little Sunnyside label on there and our nice custom stamp says grass seed. But this is a mixture specific for the Pacific Northwest. It's called Seattle Shade and Sun. You can't get more Northwest than that. So it's a nice mixture of ryegrass and fescues, 2 strains of each, about 50-50. And whether I have shade, whether I have sun, a mixture of both, the proper seed's going to germinate and you'll have a pretty consistent lawn. I've found it matches pretty much everything, as far as matching existing seeds. So stick with Seattle State and Son. I don't think you'll lose with that as an option. If you look at the rates, you know, I couldn't tell you exactly how much seed you need. I think people tend to dump more seed on, to be honest, than they probably need to. But if you look at your turf area, get yourself an estimate. How many square feet? You don't have to get the tape measure out and the laser level and get down to the square centimeter, but estimate, you know, is it about 800? Is it about 1,000? Whatever the lawn is, then we can look at using the right amount. If I look at grass seed, you know, typically after a good thatching, you know, maybe I have 50% dirt, 50% green grass still. You know, maybe I'm putting down a pound or two per 1,000 square feet. It's not a huge amount of grass seed. Maybe I've really thatched hard and I've got a lot more dirt, or maybe I'm starting from scratch. You know, I'm going to be up there in that 4, 5, maybe 6 pounds per 1,000 square feet to start. I don't like doing the trigger seed because I think seed's pretty light and it blows everywhere. Nothing's worse than picking grass out of the edge of your flower beds after you've done reseeding everything. So try just hand sprinkling. It's not a huge task. It won't take you long, but I'll typically dump my seed in a nice 5-gallon bucket with the handle and just start in the back corner and just toss. Try to go 2 directions. You want that seed to lay out, almost look like little rice holes on the ground, you know, going this way, that way, every way. And if you're looking at nothing but seed with no dirt, that's way too much. So kind of play with, maybe do a, you know, little corner of the garden and get used to, okay, that's about 3 handfuls and I got it down to the right amount. So if I put seed down, okay, I've got my thatch out of there, I've got my moss taken care of, all that debris is gone and I'm left with what is, and you'll see in my pictures here in a minute. Now it's time to put the seed down with organic lawn food. Would kind of be the next step. So if I look at lawn food, this is the brand new package from EB Stone. That's the same lawn food I'm on for about 25 years now. We also carry Spoma organic lawn food on occasion. There's great, as long as it's organic, I don't care, because it's going to be slower release, a little bit less nitrogen, a little better for the soil with the humic acid, but it's going to help build my grass slowly and gradually. It's never going to burn. You know, inevitably somebody buys a bag of this and calls me next week and say, I had a mistake. I was putting it in my spreader and I spilled the bag on my lawn. What should I do? And I always kind of smile and chuckle. I just kick it out in a circle and spread it out a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything. The organic lawn food will never burn. It's much slower nitrogen release. So it lasts a lot longer, builds the soil, and I don't have to apply it as much. If you're doing it here in spring when you're redoing or rejuvenating your lawn, you might go back here in like early summer, you know, late May, maybe mid-June or so, maybe one more time in the fall, and that should be it. I'm not going out there every 6 weeks with the chemical fertilizer and trying to keep it, you know, dark green. This will get a nice emerald color consistent through the entire year. I like mowing my cross pattern and my OCD lines in my grass. It's not that I hate mowing the lawn, but I think everybody would rather do something different in the summer. So if you go organic, it's going to get on the once a week. Sometimes with me, it's only every 2 weeks on a nice, easy schedule. I'm not having to run out and mow it 4 times in 10 days after I apply a heavier chemical fertilizer, and then it crashes and I got to put mow food on, and that cycle never ends. If you try organic, nothing makes me happier than the converts I've made over the years that come back the next year and say, man, I got that food you talked about and it is way better and it's been easier to deal with. So try EB Stone Nature's Green. That's a great food. And again, it will not burn seed is the huge part of this. I have seed down. I can put my lawn food down right on it with the seed. And then the next one with that is lime. You know, we carry lightning lime from a Spoma, okay, which you'll see a picture of here in a minute. Lightning lime is not a fertilizer by any means. I want to make sure that's clear because a lot of people think that is a fertilizer, a moss killer. It's none of the above. Lime is strictly calcium, and when I apply that on my turf area, it's soaking in and changing the pH of the soil. I think we're going to try this again here. Now double click me. There we go. Is that better? Nicole shaking her head. All right. We figured it out finally. So again, lime, something like lightning lime, very fast acting, It'll change the pH of my turf area. If you want to kind of know the secret between moss and grass, moss loves moisture. Everybody knows that, but it loves acidic soil. Lawn, like sweet soil, frankly, will grow better in slightly alkaline or neutral conditions. So if I can apply lime spring, fall, it's a quick little application in the spreader. I will gradually bring the pH of my turf areas up a little bit, and I will have less moss. You know, speaking for me, 20 years ago, starting out the house we're in, nothing but moss twice a year, never ended. Shade, wet, dry, didn't matter where. I always had moss coming out of winter. Now I'm down to just a few strips of, frankly, where it should be. In the real wet, shady corners of my yard here and there is about the only place I get much moss to develop. So I know I've got that pH up. This isn't something you're going to see, you know, change in a week or a month or maybe not even a year. But if you get on a schedule of spring, fall, March, September, and you start doing that, you're going to get your pH up and you're going to have a much less moss to deal with come the next year eventually. Okay. So I hope everybody's clear on that. We've got everything cleaned out. We've got our seed down, food down, lime down. And like I mentioned, compost or the top coat from EB Stone. Now that all that's down, now I want to cover that up very lightly. I don't want to bury it. I don't want to cover it with 1 inch or 2 inches. It's just a eighth of an inch, maybe a 1/4 inch at the most, that I can cover all that mixture on there, add a little bit of nutrition with the compost or the top coat, but I'm protecting that seed. A dry, sunny day like today, I don't have to worry about watering. I love birds all over my yard in Everett here. I don't want the birds taking half my seed, so that covers it up and protects it from the birds a little bit as well. But I have to keep that seed moist is the key. And if I top dress with the light covering of either one of those, I protected my seed. My insurance policy is good. It's not going to dry out quite as quick, and I'm going to have the grass germinate much better. This is why we try to do this here. This class is always late February to mid-March. This is the ideal month in March to maybe early April, where we have regular rain, the temperatures are cool, the grass will still germinate and grow, but I don't have to worry about running home from work every night and wetting down my turf so that seed doesn't dry out. So try to get it done now. Inevitably, 50, 100 people come in the summer and find me, hey, I never got to my lawn. Can I do it in the summer? Absolutely. You could do this any time of the year, but the issue is in June, July, August, you're going to have to put an awful lot of water on that turf area, and it's not going to be once a day. It's probably going to be morning and afternoon every day until that grass has a chance to germinate, get some root system developed, and then we're back in business a little bit later. So try to do this here in spring. Before I talk about diseases and insects and moles, kind of think of this as like a two weekend project. Think about, whether it's next weekend, the weekend after, whenever you've got time. I take care of my moss and my weeds one weekend. The next weekend, I can go get my thatcher, take care of all that business, and boom, get my ingredients down, my seed, my food, my lime, my top dress down, and I'm golden. You're going to have great grass. You'll see in my slideshow here in a minute, I'll kind of show you a progression here as we go through and get these projects done. I'll mention diseases number 7. Now, everybody's not going to have a disease in their turf. I don't want to tell you if you've got a brown patch, it's a disease. It could be a number of different things, from the dog maybe visiting that area, to a thatch disease, to crane fly, to a little bit of anything. So you can always do a little investigating or send a picture or bring a sample in, and we can help you try to figure out what's going on. But diseases in particular up here, brown patch, red thread, snow mold, there's a lot of different funguses that could infect our turf. It is something I would treat. Eventually, to be honest with you, with an organic nitrogen source like the lawn food, and we get warm, the grass will grow through it and look fine for summer. But if you let it sit in a thatch and you don't thatch your grass, it will eventually kill out circular or patches of the turf area that you will have to go back and rake out and overseed and do the same process to get that grass to come back. So if you have red thread, there'll be a couple pictures I'll show you as an example in the show. Consider getting it treated here before we get too far into spring. My 2 choices, again, chemical. This is Infuse, which is a granular systemic fungicide. side. So there's nothing organic about that at all. Again, if it's used properly, it's not going to cause a huge issue to the environment. But kids and pets and all the rest of it, I would not let them out on the grass until that has a chance to sit there on that thatch layer, kill the disease, and flush through with some rain or you watering it down into the soil surface, and then you're fine. So that's probably no pet, no kid, nothing on there for the day or two when you apply something like that. It does work. It comes in a liquid form too if you'd rather spray it on, but that will cover your grass blades and get into that thatch layer and kill out the root of the problem. I use this one. It's called Revitalize, and you'll see a picture of that in the slideshow as well. This is the natural way to go. I had a couple of nice people email me before class and made me happy saying, hey, I don't want to use chemicals. How can I get rid of red thread? This is your answer. Revitalize is what they call a biofungicide. It kind of sounds nuclear, but it's actually really safe. This is a bacillus solution of bacteria that frankly eats fungus. So if I apply this on my turf area, I've got a shield up, and anything that tries to propagate, it will keep it from coming up. Now I could go put the infuse down probably one time and walk away. If I'm going to go the natural route, I'm going to maybe have to do this particular thing, you know, every couple, 2-3 weeks here as we're through the wet season, and I will keep those issues to a minimum. Just as I mentioned, you know, Revitalize is good for a lot of things. I mean, this is something we have a lot of customers use. Vegetable garden, roses, you could put it on anything in your yard, and that would be kind of the natural way to go for fungicide. So that's Revitalize. So that's the disease end. Excuse me one second. If we talk about bugs, you know, the main thing we'll get in turf areas is going to be the crane fly. Now, crane fly, I put a couple pictures in the slideshow so you can see, instead of me saying it's a little grub about this big, and this is what you'll see. Crane fly is an evil little creature. It kind of looks like maybe a mosquito meets daddy long leg spider, and you'll see those mamas kind of skimming across the turf layer, you know, in cool season, spring and fall, and she's going across the turf and just plugging eggs into the surface soil. Her larvae develop, and their food is grass roots. So if you know your soil's good, you feed your lawn, man, I got brown patches everywhere. It might be huge areas. I fought this at my house too. I would have you grab a square shovel and just dig up a little square of turf, lay it over on its side, and just look through the soil and the root zone real carefully, and you will see the grubs that I'll show you here in a minute in the picture. That's the only way you're going to tell about crane fly. You bring, you know, you tell me your grass is brown. I don't want to sell you something you don't need if it's not crane fly. It could be a lot of other things too, but you'll always find the larvae in there, and they will eat the roots, and they could take out an entire lawn pretty quick. If I have crane fly, you know, this is the way to go. We'll get lots of birds is what I hope for, and they eat them for me. If I have to put an application down, it's going to be the insect and grub control. So I can put that in my spreader and put that out on my lawn, and that soaks into the soil and will kill the larvae, as well as, you know, we don't fight as much of the fleas and things like that, but it'll take care of really any soil or turf insect issue you have. That is chemical. I wish I had an answer for you the natural way. That is not one I've been able to find a good answer for crane fly doing it naturally, but that would be the option, is the insect grub control. Okay. Last one would be moles. You know, and I'll kind of chuckle. I'm going to knock on wood. If I can find some here, I'll pretend like that's wood. Because I've been lucky not to get a lot of moles. Where my house is, I'm kind of sitting up on a little knoll. And my neighbors, I have not sent their moles my way here in 20 years. Eventually, I'm sure I'll get one. But I've helped my folks and other people kind of take care of mole issues. It's a really tough one. I mean, you can get, you know, blue in the face with a shotgun and exhaust hose out of your car, and there's all kinds of things I've heard people try to get the moles out of their lawns. But honestly, I would think of it as a 3-step process. Number one, you know, think biology. He's there because there is something to eat. So crane fly larva, another type of grub in the soil. Maybe if I use a product like the insect grub control, I will eliminate those insects. The mole has nothing to eat. Perhaps he goes the other direction. I would recommend trying Mole Max. This is a castor oil based product made by Bonide. I'll put this in my spreader. It's very easy to apply. That's a great deterrent for moles. If I walked out in my lawn when I came home today and I saw 3 fresh hills, I'm going to go, okay, it's on. You got to get out of here. The mistake people make with Molmax is they take the bag home and they cover everything with Molmax thinking, I'm going to get you. It's not going to work that way. We have to get him out and then another chunk and then to the neighbors. And then you kind of wave and say, sorry, I sent my moles your direction. So think of Molmax as 1/3, treat the active area, wait a week, then go out another third and do it one more time, then wait another week. Now we can go to the edge of the area. So try to do it in 3 phases and get him to move from there to there and then across the property line. And then you can have the neighbors yell at you for sending your moles over. So try that as a second phase. The third one would be, wars on. I want a trap, I want a gasser, I want a shotgun. I don't know, whatever your weapon of choice is, but I'm going to find you and I'm going to get you somehow. We can do it both ways. I kind of chuckle because, believe it or not, it is illegal to trap a mole in the state of Washington. Not that the sheriff's probably ever going to come give you a ticket for killing the mole in your grass. And it's kind of funny because we can have mole traps to sell, but you're not supposed to buy them. So, but either way, we sell out them every year. They do work well. Just be careful with your fingers, read the instructions and set it in a proper place and you will catch them. Mr. Smith, the owner here, catches most of the moles in the neighborhood for the neighbors still. And he swears by the cinch trap. That's what we have there in the store. I have not had the patience to set the traps out myself. I usually try to repel. I would try to repel them to the neighbors first and then have that as a last resort. Okay. So that's kind of a quick little rundown. Use that sheet for reference. I'm going to start my slides here and just show you a couple things real quick. Okay. If I look at the pictures here, these are the products that I showed you. So if we kind of review real quick, moss control, those are my 2 choices. I've got a iron granular that I be careful with staining again, or I have that liquid potassium, the Moss Max liquid that I can just hook on my hose, do a little spraying, spray it on my roof, my sidewalk, whatever else. And I'll just mention too, that will kill algae, lichens, all those creatures that are a little tougher to kill sometimes. We have some folks, frankly, even take that home. They complain about moss on the bark of a tree, up in an old fruit tree, anywhere like that. As long as I spray that on the plant when it's dormant, it's not in the growing season. I want to make sure that's clear. I could spray that on my apple tree and kill some of the moss off the bark if I wanted. It'll come back. I'm not going to lie to you. It's Washington. We're wet and we're cool, so it will come back, but that's another use for it. Weed control. Here's the product choices. Weed Beater Ultra chemical works well in cold weather, so I can start that early, about 45-degree range, and still have death of weeds without having to wait. The Weed Beater plus the crabgrass is Weed Beater Ultra plus more. I'd step up a notch and take care of some other things. If you read that label, it'll list all the little goodies it'll kill. Sedge ender, same exact thing. I've added in some annual sedges. Maybe for us, I might mention, some folks with farms, maybe pasture, maybe live a little bit nearer to a wetter area. That might take care of some of the rushes, the sedges, some of the native things that might be creeping into the edge of your lawn from a native area, that would take care of those. Brush killer, it sounds funny, but I've had a lot of people fighting. In particular, I'll just mention again, horsetail and buttercup, things that you're not going to get death with some of the common herbicides. Brush killer will do the job. Just be real careful on the edges of your lawns. You do not get that on perennials and shrubs and other plants because that will kill anything it touches. Weed Beater Complete. I didn't mention yet, but I saved it for the show. We talked a little bit about weeds, selective herbicides to use in lawn, non-selective herbicides that I would kill anything that I'd use in my driveway. Those are your 2 main kinds. The other half of that is what we would call post-emergent and pre-emergent. So if I have a growing little dandelion in my lawn and I apply a weed killer to it, That's a post-emergent spray. I'm going to soak into the leaves, kill the plant down to the roots, and I'm done. A lot of people ask for a pre-emergent. Okay, I've killed all the weeds and I don't want anything coming back for the season. We would get a pre-emergent killer. So the one that's safe for lawns would be this high-end Weed Beater Complete. This would be like a golf course type application. That would kill post-emergent and pre-emergent. So if I put that down here this time of year, I'm going to kill existing weeds. And as that soaks down to the soil layer, that makes a film on the top of my soil beneath the grass that will keep anything from germinating through that for the season, okay? You have to be real careful with pre-emergence. I don't use a lot of them in my place. Some people they work great for, but you got to be real careful in the gardens with things like bulbs, any overusing them around perennials, things that want to break through the soil, you'll get that herbicide damage as well. In the lawn, we just talked about doing all this work so that I can reseed and rejuvenate my grass here in spring. If I put a pre-emergent down, I cannot do grass seed. So you've got to put the grass seed, let it germinate and get growing. Then we can go ahead and put the pre-emergent down. Because if you do that, it will not let your seed grow, okay? The one on the right there is an example. That's the bottle I have in my garage. That's that natural weed killer, the Weed Beater FE, in a ready-to-use gallon. I don't have to mix it. I just pull the trigger off the handle, walk around, spray, 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 and I'm done. There's the lime, lightning lime from Espoma, and there's Espoma's organic lawn food that we do carry a little bit of that, mostly the Nature's Green again. Lightning lime, I'll just tell you the reason why I chose to carry that here. It's not dusty. My issue with lime is a lot of the products I've tried are very dusty. You put them in the bag, you try to put them in a sprayer, and I got dust flying everywhere. This is really a nice prilled form of lime that'll go through the spreader easier and give me a nice even coating. Put it on your vegetable garden too. That's a great way to sweeten up your vegetable soil. It's the only bag I've seen where they kind of put their money where their mouth is. On the back of that label, it's the only bag of lime I've seen that says, if you put down this much per this much square footage, you will change your pH this. And so you can really maybe do a quick little pH test in your turf area, see what the number is and go, okay, if I get 20 pounds of this and apply it over my 3,000 square feet, I'm going to raise my pH half a point and I'm going to have a lot less moss, okay? There's the Nature's Green. Again, that's the package. They have brand new package this year. So if you ask for that Nature's Green lawn food, this is last year's package. I wasn't able to get a new slide of the brand new bag. And we have the new package in here. It's the same great lawn food that a lot of our customers swear by. We've got lots of it in and ready to go for springtime. There's your two top dress or seed covers. So that's the top coat. Got the fancy guy in the red shirt mowing his lawn there. That's where I'm going to use for a real fine, maybe a little higher end seed cover. I've done that before. I use compost, which I usually always have 5 or 10 bales of that EB Stone organic compost behind my house. It works great. You know, get a couple buckets with handles on them. It fluffs up really nicely. And I usually just start in the corner and just sprinkle it out real quick by hand. It doesn't take as long as you think it is. And to me, I like the hand sprinkling. It's peaceful, take you a couple hours, but it's one of those things you can focus where it goes. Maybe you had some areas that went totally bare that I need to put a little extra cover on. Maybe there's thicker areas I don't need as much. Maybe there's a little bit of a dip here and there. I can apply a little bit more in some of those areas and even out my lawn a little bit as well. There's a great picture of kind of red thread. If you walked out in your grass and you saw that pinky, reddy, browny, you know, kind of random little circular, most of the time, patches, and then you looked close, the one on the right, you would see the spores on there. There's pink thread, there's red thread. It wouldn't be that different for dollar spot or rust, or there's a zillion different fungal issues that perhaps could get in turf. That's the main one I see up in Washington is red thread. It doesn't matter which one it is, we would still use the same treatment, that infuse if we go the chemical route, or we would get the revitalize if we want to go natural and use that biofungicide. There's the two of them right there. Infuse in a bag, revitalize in a bottle. there's some crane fly. And I kind of took 2 pictures. You know, if you walked out, you know, there's a picture of a grub that somebody was nice enough to lay on top of the soil. You can see the grass does not look good. It's very sparse. They probably did some work and then figured out, man, I got crane fly. I bet you're in there somewhere. And it's not going to be one. There'll be hundreds, if not thousands of them through the turf area. So look for that grub. It's about, you know, sometimes maybe a half an inch to an inch long, could be gray, kind of tannish color gray. But you will always find those if like I said before, dig up a little square, lay it on its side, look in there real quick, and you'll see those grubs if you've got crane fly. If you walked out, you know, just kind of as an example, you know, that was a great lawn last year. What happened? I fed it, I watered it, you know, it's not compacted. You've gone through these steps. I can almost guarantee you it's probably crane fly down there eating the root system. And that's what we would use for that, you know, get the insect grub control from Bonide. Molmax, so there's the castor oil I recommended. I put the sonic spike on there just as an option for some folks that get the moles out of their yard. This isn't probably going to work for everybody. You know, if I ask 10 good gardeners and they've tried these things, you know, this worked for this person, that worked for that person. Moles aren't the dumbest creatures in the world. They'll figure some things out. But the sonic spike is something that's battery activated. I would not do solar up here. We don't have enough sun year round to make that work. But the battery sonic spikes, maybe you have them at the neighbors now, or you don't have them. These are spikes you could put along your perimeter to keep them from coming into your yard. It sends a little chatter kind of sonic sound into the soil. You don't hear it. And it does well for some people on keeping them out in the first place. Now, here's a couple pictures I finally remembered last year after 20 years of teaching a class like this to take a couple pictures. So this is from my mass demolition last March, because I do thatching every year and do exactly the things I'm telling you to do. Again, I have not had to aerate because I'll mention right now, soil is everything for lawn. You know, if I have a good 8 inches of well-drained, good soil, I'm going to have happy turf. If I have 2 inches of soil and a bunch of hard pan clay, or I just bought a house and the landscaper, quote unquote, installed my lawn and compacted everything and put sod on top, and then 1 year later it's crashed and burned, it's all about the soil. So if I don't have to aerate, because I know when I built my lawn 20 years ago, I fixed the soil, I fixed the drainage, I've got good content. It's just a matter of managing the thatch. So that on the left after thatching, you know, if my wife didn't know better, she would have walked out and said, why have you killed our lawn? Because it does not look good. That's an amazing amount of debris out of a small area. When I rake that out, that's the one on the right, it looks brown, it looks dusty. I don't have much grass left. You can see how short it is. I'm always going to scalp my lawn down on the lowest setting that I can before I thatch. I want all the grass out of there I can, so I can access that with either the rake or the thatcher to get the rest of it out of there. So I'm scalped down brown, and you can see what it looks like after raking there. Now, you can blow these up when you look at this at home, but if you look around on the left one there, that is after I've done seed, food, and lime, and I have top dressed with compost. So you can see how dark it looks. It's nice and black, dark brown. It's wet. I don't have to worry about the seed coming in. But it looks, you know, probably half dirt, half grass. Again, you probably say, man, you did too much. You got too much out of there. No, you haven't. You've gotten rid of all the weak grass, the debris, the thatch, all the issues, and got it out of there that one time a year so that I could start over. That's a picture after a week. You can see how much more grass is coming through. And then finally, after 1 month, that is what I have. I told my youngest boy, Mr. Max, he's 6 now. He gets to be the star of the show today. So that is him that last fall. So you can see the same exact color, the same exact consistency, that beautiful color turf without doing anything else last year at all. That is once in the spring, 1 dose of fertilizer in late June, and that is it. My trees are shedding leaves. You can see there he was helping me pick up leaves, but instead of stomping on my pile. And that's peak late September, early October, and it still looks great, okay? So that kind of gives you hopefully a little bit of information. That's a lot lot of turf information. Before I turn it over to Nicole, just to mention real quick, like all the classes will have discounts. All the things you can see behind me here, or you saw on the slideshow, will be on 20% off starting today all the way through Friday. So it's a great time to stock up on lawn food, all the supplies you need to get going here for the spring project. Take advantage of the 20% off. That would include the top coat, the compost, everything we talked about today, okay? I wanted to mention a couple. I really appreciate folks filling out the survey. Some weeks it's 20 pages of information to read through, but it does help us as we go class to class. And I always try to change things, which is why we put pictures of the products up so everybody could have a hard copy of them this time when they go back and watch it if they need. So things, sending in questions ahead of time. I pulled a couple out here. I think we covered everyone's questions as we went through the class, but just to mention a couple, here's a nice one. Asked about aeration. You know, aerating machines go down 4 inches. Can I find something that goes down deeper? Because after that, it's clay. No, aeration machines are 4 inches, and that's about it. You heard me mention a little bit ago, you know, having 8 inches of soil is probably ideal for growing good healthy turf in. I don't have an answer for you to fix the clay issue. If you get into compost as a top dress, that will continue to work its way through the soil structure, and it will help break up that clay long term. But aeration is not going to get you down more than 4 inches. Here's a lady that was asking about planting. She planted a brand new lawn after the class last September, and it looked great all winter, but she hasn't mowed it yet. I've been watching mine. I'm not at the point where I need to mow yet. It still is nice and tight. It hasn't started growing. But I think you're going to be there in the next couple weeks as we get warmer temperatures. I don't know if we'll have frost again. That really won't matter much for the turf. But as you start to see it grow, I would have at the mowing. And even though you redid it last September, I would take a minute and make sure you don't have bare patches. Probably don't have to do a thatching this year, but maybe we need to do a little bit of overseeding to fill in some of those areas as well. Okay. This one's asking about large cedar trees with a lot of shade and half shade. I wish I had an answer for you, my friend who sent this in, but it's a tough one when we have shade and we have surface roots of large evergreens. You're going to have a tough time growing grass in there no matter what I suggest to you. I'm not saying it can't be done, but you're going to be getting moss. You're going to have to overseed probably every spring, every fall. And frankly, the cedar, the Doug fir, whatever it is going to take up a lot of the irrigation, the moisture that comes down. So we have to worry about watering those areas maybe a little bit more in the summer sunshine up here, okay? This lady developed a slippery mucus-looking green slime on her soil surface. Might be a form of moss. I have a feeling it was probably bare soil and maybe some algae or something grow. I would follow exactly the same thing and apply the iron or a moss kill type with the potassium soap that would kill that off, but we have to go back and overseed, feed, and get that turf to come back in, and I think you will win against the green slime. This lady asked if moss out products were bad for the environment. I don't want to say that iron's bad for the environment because it isn't. I mentioned the two choices with the iron or the potassium soap, depending on the stain issue. If you want to go natural, yes, it is potassium soap for sure. There's nothing, you know, bad for the environment about the iron, except for you just got to be real careful of where it lands and not get it on plant foliage and concrete and walkways and decks, patios, places like that, because it will stain. And last one here, this is a great question. Is there a certain height you should keep your grass to make it look good? You know, that's probably more up to you. You know, if we were at the natural lawn care, you know, laws around here, they would tell you to probably keep it a little longer in the summer to conserve water. Maybe it's 2 inches long in the summer. I keep mine pretty tight, you know, more like golf course fairway. If you have some Poa annua, some different kinds of grasses, yes, maybe I get slightly different shades of green, but if I keep that mowed, none of that stuff goes to seed, and I keep mine a little tighter. It's still soft. It still looks great. It's not that it's never long, but I probably tend to go on the shorter end myself. I guess to answer your question, it would be totally up to you. If you like the grass a little longer, just keep it at 2 inches. There's nothing wrong with that at all. If you want to scalp it down, for sure, we're going to do that before we attack the work here in the spring. But after that, you can leave it a little bit longer during the season. Okay. So there's a few email. Thanks for the questions. With that, we're going to activate Nicole here, and she's going to field some more questions, I have a feeling.
So just a reminder, all these products, these lawn care products, we've got on discount 20% off until this coming Friday, which is, oh my gosh, March 5th. And those are only limited to quantity on hand to stock on hand. So hopefully you can make it down this week and snag yours so you can start getting your lawn in order. Also, this class is recorded. So if you miss anything, want to catch the slides, like Trevor said, you can, we'll post it up on our website later today. It's also going to be up on our YouTube channel, so you can subscribe to that to get notification. Pause, screenshot the slides, whatever it is, gain all that information if it went a little fast for you. And if you run into questions that we don't get to today or that pop up as you're going through these things at home, please feel free to reach out to us. Trevor's here a lot. We all are. There's lots of experts on staff, and we're happy to answer your questions to any degree whenever they pop up. So let us know. And we're going to have another class tomorrow, lastly, to make sure we're talking about controlling bugs and diseases tomorrow at 11. So hopefully you can join us for that. A lot of these questions are kind of, brief recaps of some of the things you've talked about, and some are a little bit different. So we're just going to jump in. Somebody mentioned that they know that Sluggo has iron in it. So will the iron-based moss products that you talked about also repel slugs?
No, totally different creature. It does have iron in it, but Sluggo is iron phosphate. That's a specific thing with the attractant to take care of slug snails, that end. The iron formulations for moss and everything, totally different. One won't do the other.
And when you treat the moss and it turns black, what happens if you don't rake it out? Somebody has like an acre of land that they're trying to take care of and afraid they won't be able to get everything. What's going to happen?
Well, I go back to that email about the green slime that I read. I got a feeling it will kill the moss that's there. And it certainly, when you add fertilizer, the grass will take back over. I'm sure you'll be fine. You're probably just asking for maybe a little bit more to deal with again that fall. Moss is something, again, I teach this class every late February, early March, and then every late September, early October. And we're going to do this same kind of process twice a year. I guess to answer your question, it wouldn't be the end of the world if you can. Certainly getting the debris out will open up more room for the grass to take back over a little quicker.
Gotcha. Can you use a weed control when overseeding, or do they need to happen at separate times?
Well, that's the whole thing. As I'm saying, it's almost a two weekend project. None of the herbicides, except for, again, I mentioned that granular, that's a pre and post emergent. Do not use that if you're putting seed down. Your seed will never grow. But any of the liquid things I talked about today don't have any effect on the soil. So as long as I do this one weekend, moss and weeds, let them do their job for the week. The next weekend I'm home and attack the raking, the thatching, and getting the rejuvenating done. I'm in business.
Gotcha. We've got some questions about bees, people concerned about protecting the bees and not affecting them negatively. Will the insect and grub control hurt the bees? And also, are there herbicide type products that you can use without killing off honeybees in a hive that's nearby?
Well, again, the weed beater FE is an easy choice for the lawns, because I'm all about bees and being natural in my place. So that's one you won't have any issue with any of the environment, period, if we use that HDTA iron. So weed beater FE would be the choice for you. If you're talking about the soil insect killer, ground bees, perhaps. It's not a neonic that's an active ingredient in that by any means. But the reason we're a little bit different in turf, tomorrow we'll be talking about this on above ground, and it's a whole different story. In the turf, when I put that granular down, I want that in the soil. So that's one of the very few things I would tell you, do it on a rainy day. if you did it on a nice day, water it in when you've applied the grub and insect control, because I don't need that up on the grass where maybe the bee would get in the granular or the flower or whatever. I want that into the ground. So as soon as I water that, it gets down into the thatch layer, into the surface soil, then I'm fine.
Excellent. What about lawn alternative options like clover mix lawns or other things if you don't necessarily want specific turf?
I don't have a problem with any of that. We've had quite a few customers, maybe the last few years, more than I've ever seen in my 30 years running nurseries, say, you know what, I'm done with grass. I'd rather do this. It's all up to you. I don't have any issue with it at all. You will do a huge benefit for bees in particular if you planted clover. But, you know, I honestly considered in my smaller patch of mine doing a wildflower mix, which I still might hear one of these days. You know, I like my grass. You know, I got 2 young boys and I like to go out and chip and putt a little bit here and there in it too when I'm at home. It's totally a personal thing, but yeah, lawn substitutes, I don't have a problem with it all. I think lawns maybe get a bad name a little bit out there on the internet and in Publix, and frankly, even with some of our state agencies. And it's because of the chemical use. If you've got healthy turf and you're going natural and using organic lawn food and phosphate-free fertilizer and all that, you're not damaging the environment at all. Yes, I probably have to water a little bit more up here in our neck of the woods in the summer to keep it green and keep it nice. Besides maybe a little bit more water use than I would have to use on clover or wildflowers or an alternative. That would be the one thing I'd probably keep in mind.
Do you do anything different for lawn care in like muddy areas, specifically like shady, that, you know, not super great drainage? Is there anything different you should do to care for grass in those muddy areas?
Well, lawn is not going to fix the water issue. And if it's wet and mucky, you know, I would try to build the soil up a little bit more. I don't know if it's because of springs or it's just an area that might not drain as well. Again, a couple people emailed about, you know, compost and sand and some other things we could put on. You know, sand's not the end of the world, but there's no nutrition in sand at all. You know, yes, you might help the drainage a little bit. If I'm a golf course, I'm sanding it twice a year. I've never recommended sand for homeowners. If you do it, you know, more power to you. I would rather have you get a bunch of compost, to be honest with you, because I'm going to add nutrition. I'm going to protect the surface layer. And again, as compost works its way into the soil, it will help with drainage a little bit and it won't be quite as slimy. I might suggest to this person who's asking specifically, that is mucky, can that area be built up a little bit? Could we get some, you know, fresh 3-way soil delivered and maybe till that in with our existing earth and get the soil up a little drier, a little bit better mixture in there that might help it drain better. I got a feeling it's probably the typical, you know, contractor house issue that they put down 1 inch of good black dirt, threw grass on top of it, and it's just hard pan underneath there. Unless we fix that, it's probably not going to get better long term.
And would you suggest waiting to aerate your lawn until it's not so soggy and wet like some lawns are right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the same thing. I don't get real muddy because, again, I spent the time building up my soil years ago to get the mixture right. If you're going to rut out with the machine, that's just more problems to fix later. You're going to have to wait until it dries out a little bit. And then just, again, watch the water on the fresh seed a little bit more as we get into mid-April, early May. If it's not raining, you know, for a day, then okay, let me just lightly wet it. We're not going to flood it, but we just need to lightly wet that seed down so it germinates properly.
And after you aerate or dethatch, things like that, can you mulch them up with your mower and leave them? Do you need to pick them all up?
I would always remove the debris. I mean, the whole point of doing this is we're trying to get all the junk out of our turf area that doesn't belong. You have to get the plugs out of there. You're going to end up with the bumpy mess everywhere. I mean, that's usually how it starts. You get a machine, you do the right thing, maybe an aerate, and then you leave all the plugs down there, and then I end up with all these dips and valleys. You got to rake that stuff up. And if you're going to thatch, get that junk out of there so I've got room for all that fresh to grow.
We've got a lot of questions about pet friendly products, some of the ones you've talked about. So can you tell us some of the good ones if you've got dogs or pets? And also, do you have any tips on keeping grass safe if you have dogs, in terms of, I mean, dogs will be dogs. Mine tear mine up too.
I don't have an answer for the dog who likes to dig holes. I mean, that's going to be a training issue, so I can't touch that one. But if I'm going to keep, dogs, my kids, I'm in the same boat. I don't want them getting chemicals on them. If you ask me, I think it's a huge part of the environmental issues these days, with overuse of a lot of things on turf areas everywhere. If I'm going to go natural again, the moss killer, I don't have a problem either way. You can use the iron or get the potassium. So both those are friendly. If I put, granular iron down, I'm just going to keep my dog out of, or my dog or the kids out of the turf area for the day until it has a chance to dissolve, kill the moss and sink to the bottom. And then I'm fine. Herbicides, in fact, frankly, honestly, even the natural one, I apply those once they dry on, I am fine. So you would never spray weeds on a wet day. We have to have a day that it has a chance, the sun's out, to dry on and soak into that plant and kill it. So again, keeping the kids and the dogs in the house for the day, applying it in the morning, let it get dry on, then I'm fine. If it's the only area, well, where am I going to let my dog go out and take care of his business? Maybe we do 2 sections one day, let him have one and do another one another day, kind of rotate it around. So you've always got one that's okay to let the pets out. Herbicides, I'd worry about more. I'll be honest, at Sunnyside, we don't even sell synthetic lawn food. We only sell organic. So if I'm building my soil, that's one that makes me proud that we just carry organic. You do not need synthetic lawn food at all. And frankly, the phosphorus is the huge environmental issue with that. I could put organic lawn food down. My wife will tell you our yard smells like chicken poop or fish poop for the day. But once it goes into the soil, again, I'm not hurting anything. My dog's not going to eat it. My kid's not going to eat it. So that's all I'm worried about with that. The other products, again, the crane fly, I wish I had an answer for you. I tend to live with it a little bit if it's not too bad and not apply the insect grub myself. But if I get that on there on a rainy day or water it in, again, it's not going to get on the paws, the kids, the rest of it. So as long as I've got that day to water it in or let Mother Nature do it for me, there's no issue with the mole controls I showed, Mole Max or anything like that. It's just castor oil that they frankly put a little clay particle around so that it sticks in the soil better. But again, I want that in the ground. So if I throw Moss Max out, do it on a rainy day or water it in when you apply it, and then I'm good to go as well.
Speaking of the smell of chicken manure, somebody asked if you can use that as like a top coat or as a compost, or is it too hot? Do they need to mix it with something else?
I'd be real careful with the pure chicken, manure, compost, whatever you want to call it, unless it's really aged out. I'd say you got a real good chance of burning new seed with that. Existing lawn, probably not, but I'd be real sparse and not put a lot down. That's a tough one because I'd almost want to see your chicken manure or compost. You don't have to bring it down here, but I'd be a little cautious with that because I think there's a pretty good chance, especially if you're going to do some seeding, overseeding, that you would do some burning with fresh chicken.
Okay. In terms of aerating your lawn, how long do you wait? Do you aerate before or after you thatch? How long do you need to wait in between?
Again, you could almost, the aerator is going to get at the soil better if it's clear. So, I mean, if you're going to do this and do everything on that list, again, I would follow that schedule and get moss and weeds taken care of. I would thatch and get all that light, fluffy mess out of there. That's pretty easy raking. Then I would go back and plug my area and rake those plugs out and get them out of the turf area, because now I've got a blank slate to start over again. I can bring in some compost or fill to fill all my plug holes, get it all raked out, and go right through the same process.
Are we talking days in between these steps, a week?
If it was me, again, I would give the moss and the weeds, especially the earlier in the spring we do this, with the cooler weather, a little bit longer to make sure we get them all. I would try to get one weekend, the next weekend. I would give it 3 days at minimum. I mean, if you're home, working from home or retired or want to bust this out, give it 3 days. If you do the moss and the weeds, wait 3 days and then do your thatching, and then boom, you're right into the process.
Can you remind us again when you fertilize?
Well, if again, I'm going to speak just on organic, because I think I used to play in my yard with, my wife would be upset with my stripes in the backyard. I would put this down and see how it did, and I'd add this and see how it did. I thought EB Stone Nature's Green was the superior lawn food on the market, and I still think it is. If you use a good organic one like that, and we get it down now, mid-March, early April, sometime in this next month, as we get into spring projects, we go back and feed again. Maybe it's mid-June, early July. We give it that summer dose, and then we do the same process in the fall and apply a nice fertilizer mid-September, early October before we get into winter. That should be all you need. Maybe you miss one. Oh, well, I'll be honest, I missed mine last fall. I still got great looking turf, but I can tell you're going to need some nitrogen this spring, and it'll look even better. It's not the end of the world, but if you did it 3 times a year, I think you'd be very pleased with the consistent color of the grass, the healthy soil, because they're using organics, and not having to mow quite as much either.
So speaking of mowing, somebody asked about that. If you fertilize and then mow, do you need to be concerned about it kind of just negating all that fertilizer work? So do you water it in? Do you put space in between the two?
I mean, again, that's kind of why I set up this process, and maybe I should made it clear at the beginning is, again, if I go out and I put down my lime and my food and I do this backwards, then I spray for moss and I kill my weeds and I thatch, you just took all that good stuff you applied into your yard waste, and off to the compost it goes. So try to, if you're going to mow, always get it mowed first here coming out of winter, then put all my food down. Now I've got a few days, it's raining. It's not like it takes weeks for it to get into the soil. Even in the summer, when I apply the fertilizer, I'll do one big heavy watering, all goes into the soil, and I'm good to go.
Can you do lime the same time as the fertilizer?
Yep. That's why, again, neither of those things, as long as I use organic lawn food. If I go get a bag of Scott's and I put that down with my seed, you're going to burn it. It's not going to grow because it's too much nitrogen. So as long as, for us, organic lawn food, lime, seed, you can put all those. I do literally finish one, go fill the next, cover it up, and I'm done.
Somebody mentioned that they use dolomite in their vegetable garden. Can you also use that on the lawn as well?
Yeah, again, essentially, that's what lightning lime is. This is all dolomite lime, a calcium source to get that pH up. I just don't like the dust. When people tend to put lime in their spreaders more in a turf area, you're going to have a dusty mess going everywhere. If it's soil sweet, it tends to be more powdered lime. As long as it's prilled, which, again, of all the ones I've demoed, that lightning lime has got the best size capsule that goes through the spreader the easiest, and it's not dusty, but it's all essentially dolomite lime.
Excellent. And then kind of hitting on the raised veggie beds or gardening. So there are some people that have some veggie beds and they're concerned about any of these products that you're using on the lawn that's right up next to these beds. Do they need to be concerned about any of that going into their veggie beds?
Not at all. Again, nothing we've talked about today, unless you put it in a spreader and throw it into there. If you use some of the chemical products, yes, it might get in there, but none of this stuff's going to travel through the soil or cause you any issue. The lime is, a couple of people already mentioned. I mean, I'll tell you my trick for using lime is I love lilacs. I've got some huge lilac trees in my yard. I've got vegetable raised beds and in-ground plantings, and I've got my lawn. Lime goes on all 3 of those things every year. That's about the only thing I worry about in Western Washington. Lilacs love a sweet soil. Vegetable garden loves a higher calcium content in the soil and being a higher pH, non-acidic, and your turf does as well. So that's why I'm like, well, you've only got a 1,000 square feet of grass, I'd still go buy that bag because it's going to last you either 2 applications, spring or fall. And I can take some extra, go throw a couple cups around my lilac every spring, get the vegetable garden done, and boom, I'm ready to go.
And all of these products that we're talking about, specifically grass seed, how long will they last? If you don't use everything in one season, can you hang on to it and use it the next?
Oh yeah, everything that's behind me, we'll leave grass seed aside for a second. Everything behind me is never going to go bad. So as long as I keep it out of the weather in my garage, I've got a big tub because my wife complains about the smell of my organic fertilizer. So it has a sealed lid on it so it doesn't smell at my garage. But I keep all that stuff either in a bin on my shelf or in the barrel in my garage. It's good forever. It's never going to go bad. The grass seed would be a little bit different. If I buy grass seed here this spring and I don't use it all, it's definitely good to go for this fall. But say a year goes by, it's not garbage, but the germination rate will go down a little bit every single season. So if you find old grass seed and you got no idea how long you've had it, I would buy some fresh. If you know you just got it last year, I would say you're still good to go that next spring again. After that, probably get some fresh.
Jumping tracks a little bit, somebody mentioned that they've had some mushrooms popping up, specifically a little fairy ring of mushrooms. Do you have a recommendation on how to get rid of those?
Yeah, well, mushrooms, and someone always asks me about mushrooms. Thank you, because that's a good question. I should probably, I don't know if I'd add a mushroom section to the outline, but if you have them, I would say congratulations. That means you have good soil. Mushrooms do not grow in garbage soil, so it's a good sign. Almost always mushrooms are coming from old wood. So I can guarantee you, I found them in my yard the first few years when I redid my lawn. There was some huge old evergreen trees, I'm guessing at some point in the front yard that buried the house that I didn't inherit, luckily. I've got old decaying root system down there in the soil. That's where I'm going to get mushrooms to grow from. If you want to take care of them in the lawn, certainly mowing will get rid of most of the caps, and you're not going to let them go to spore and make more. The only thing that we really have that I could walk out and spray is a product called Consan 20, CONSAN, the number 20. Real easy to remember. We have little pints of that. If you came down and got a bottle of that, and I walked out and sprayed those mushroom areas of my turf, again, it won't hurt your grass. It's basically a non-selective disinfectant, so it does molds and mildews and bacteria and all kinds of fun stuff, but it's very effective on the mushrooms.
Excellent. I know we're going to talk bugs and diseases tomorrow, but somebody asked about the bonide insect and grub control. Does that also have any impact on apple maggots?
Nothing to do with apple maggots. We're on the insect and grub is a soil-borne insect killer, a turf type insect killer. The other option we would have that we'll talk about tomorrow is 8, like the number 8 written out, more for vegetable soil issues and that kind of thing. Apple maggots is a totally different creature, and tune in tomorrow because I'll be talking apple maggots for a minute. That's one you got to catch with traps, to be honest with you.
If you have a mold problem or had one, how do you recommend repairing the lawn, fixing the holes that they dig in the mounds?
Well, again, I've talked a lot about compost and top coat, covering seed, all these things. Those are all way too light to fill a hole, a dip, a rut, whatever you want to call it. That is not going to fix an uneven grass issue because it's too light. If you've got areas where I had moles, I'm going to try to take the heel of my boot and try to compact those down and get rid of any air pockets first of all. But I'm going to get topsoil. We sell bags of it here that's totally clean of weeds, all organic from EB Stone. If you need a bunch, I'd recommend contacting a local soil company to have you dump a yard or 2 or 3 or whatever it is. But that would have some more substance to it and some weight. Typically 1/3 compost, 1/3 topsoil, 1/3 sand a lot of times in those mixtures. So it's got a little more weight to it and that won't settle. So if I'm going to use, if you've got a dip like this is what I do. I'll have a dip here, a dip there. Maybe I got my 6-year-old dug a little extra hole out of the corner of my yard by the sandbox. I'm going straight for a bag of the EB Stone topsoil that I can fill that area, compact a little bit better as a base then I can go right back on overseed, food, lime, repair, all that stuff before you get into that, and before you get into the seeding and the fertilizing part of it. And then I can still top dress with that fine dusting of compost, and off we go.
Somebody asked, they have a, I wouldn't say invasive, but a low growing plant that's kind of escaped the area that they were hoping to kind of contain it. Will any of these weed control products also take care of those type of, it's specifically a hardy geranium that they were asking about?
I was going to say, that was one I was going to mention. Typically I see a lot of the hardy geraniums, sweet violets, a lot of ground covers, especially things probably for shade gardens that folks plant that tend to naturalize, reseed a little bit. It's not the end of the world. As long as, again, the sprays I showed, you know, I don't know that Weed Beater FE may not nuke it. I would try that first, depending on what plant we're talking about. But any of the herbicides I've showed that won't hurt the grass will nuke sweet violet, you know, other plants like that are creeping out of garden beds for sure.
Excellent. We're going to do one last question before we end for today. That insect and grub control, does that also affect the earthworm population that you've got going on in the soil?
Well, that is the best question of the day. I'll be honest, you saved the best for last, because that has bothered me probably going on 15 or 20 years now, because I have contacted Bonide, some state agencies on my own time, because I'm curious if I put a turf type. It's not systemic, so it's not, you know, murder, death, kill, but it's still death kill, we'll call it. And I'm putting that on my soil. Okay, I know it takes care of crane fly, fleas, lawn cricket, you know, what, all these other bugs that I might get, but what is it doing to the earthworm population? Because I spent years trying to get those guys back into some crappy soil in my yard finally, and I've got probably more than I want now. I got little humps everywhere this time of year, which is what I want. So I don't know, in an indirect way, I guess I'm going to say I can't answer that for sure. I feel pretty uncomfortable about using it unless I absolutely have to. And it goes back to the thing I said at the beginning. If you have to get insect and grub control because you know you have confirmed crane fly, if you think you do, I wouldn't do it unless you find it, bring it to me. We look at it together. We say, yes, you have it. Now you've got to make a choice. Maybe I don't put it on my entire property. And I, you know, typically crane fly is not going to infest a 2,000 square foot lawn overnight, but maybe you're back in the corner and you're like, well, that's weird. Everything else is green, but I got this kind of dead browned out area starting. We find the crane fly. I would only treat that little corner and feel a little better about the environment doing that, and not doing 5,000 square feet of lawn just because I had one crane fly patch in the corner kind of thing. You can look on the internet. I do every year. There's all kinds of, oh man, get some dish soap and spray this on and soak it into the soil, and they'll come out and they'll leave. Try them. You know, I try a lot of them off and on. I kind of like the mole thing with me is I smile. I haven't gotten to the point where the crane fly took out most of my OCD turf, or it might be wars on. And I might try something like the insect grub, but in the meantime, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed I don't get them quite that bad yet. How's that?
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you staying late for all the questions, and we hope to see you tomorrow for our Controlling Bugs and Diseases class at 11.